Turning Red is the story of a 13-year-old girl, May, living in Toronto, Canada in the year 2002. Due to a blessing from her ancestors, when she comes of age, she becomes a large red panda, which the rest of the women in her family have gone through as well.
Did the red peony bloom?
Being an incredibly unique Disney and Pixar movie, Turning Red actually decimates a lot of old Disney and Pixar tropes. And in many cases, we loved that these tropes were subverted, and other times, not so much. I'm Kyle with Wicked Binge, and here are the tropes that Turning Red subverted, and why we loved or hated that they were avoided. And just a heads up, this being a new movie on Disney+, spoilers ahead. The first trope that we wanted to speak about is the dead Disney parents. Now, this trope has been a thing since the very first Disney production in Snow White, where the main character's parents are dead, or in many cases they die during the movie. This happens in a wide variety of Disney films. The Lion King, Bambi, Frozen, and Cinderella all come to mind as movies that use this trope. Finding Nemo, Onward, and The Good Dinosaur are examples of Pixar embracing this trope as well. And while all these deaths are iconic for different reasons, there's a reason why there are so many memes about every Disney parent being dead. This trope also tends to lead to the evil step-parent trope, which we luckily don't see in this movie, because it's becoming a bit overdone. So we have to say that we love the fact that this trope was abandoned, because both of May's parents are good characters for different reasons, and we're glad to not have another orphan in Disney's roster. Plus, May and her mom's relationship growth is possibly one of the best we've seen as far as Disney parental relationships go. Another trope that we saw Turning Red avoid is the big bad behind the scenes. This trope is based on having some sort of hidden antagonist hiding and pulling all the strings to make the hero's life a living hell. Movies like Big Hero 6 with Yokai, or Frozen with Hans, show that a manipulative and powerful bad guy can prove to be a strong part of the movie if done right. But not only does Turning Red drift past this idea, but they completely stop any character from truly being the main villain. Although Ming is undoubtedly the main antagonist of the film, we feel like adding a big villain may have detracted from the movie's plot, and we really like the idea that this trope was abandoned. It really added to the overall slice of life style that Turning Red was going for. A similar trope to the previous, the twist villain, is another one that Turning Red avoids. Despite being touted as a more modern twist that Disney's been using, they've been using this trope since at least the early 2000s with characters like Mr. Waternoose in Monsters, Inc., or Otto from WALL-E. While more modern villains like Hans in Frozen and Screenslaver in The Incredibles 2 are often seen as not as well thought out as the earlier ones. While some twist villains are really well written and nuanced, others aren't so much. And much like we pointed out in the previous entry, adding an actual villain would have made the movie far more bloated, and wouldn't have really fit the coming-of-age style that Turning Red was going for. So again, we're really happy to see this trope subverted in Turning Red. Now, another trope that was hinted at in the film that was ultimately avoided was romantic love solves everything. To be honest, this trope has been lambasted even more in modern Disney movies like Frozen and Wreck-It Ralph 2, but it is still used as recently as Tangled. Now, despite the fact that the movie follows a young teen and does tackle a few romantic feelings and crushes, it doesn't really go anywhere. May does fall for Devin, the Daisy Mart clerk, and the boy with the emo haircut after first transforming. However, neither of these threads goes beyond being a vector for Ming to embarrass her daughter socially. One could say that familial love saves everything by the end of the film, and a lack of this trope is a good thing in our eyes. And we liked that it was skipped and was replaced by the theme of family instead. This next one is rather small, but it is a trope seen in many films, that being the Queen Bee. This trope consists of some sort of popular girl, usually with a posse who is antagonistic to the main cast in some way. Many movies and cartoons feature this trope, like Pacifica Northwest and Gravity Falls, Myrtle and Lilo and Stitch, or Paulina and Danny Phantom to name a few. This trope is played with very gently in Turning Red, when right after May first turns into her panda form, she meets a blonde girl who she has to quiet down, and when May shows off her panda form again, it seems like her and her posse are about to fulfill this role. However, she instead wants pictures with the panda.
Like it? I love it! I'll give you anything!
Because of how cute it is, which leads to May and her friends deciding to monetize the panda transformation. This is usually paired with the jerk jock trope, which Tyler fulfills to a degree in this film. But that's ultimately subverted as well when him and Mei become friends after it's revealed that he's a closeted FourTown fan. We'll say that we have mixed feelings about this trope being avoided. Don't get us wrong, we really liked that this movie was positive enough not to have a real villain, but we also think it could have been done through more characters at Mei's school. A popular and well-recognized trope the movie managed to avoid was growth through character death. Often referred to as fridging, this is when a character dies just to further another character's journey, personality, and subsequently the plot. The trope essentially referring to stuffing bodies in refrigerators. It's been used in hundreds of different mediums, ranging from Mona's death in Regular Show, to future Bulma's death in Dragon Ball Super, or Mufasa's death in The Lion King. Sure, these deaths contribute to the protagonist's journey and help them grow, but in some cases, when not written too well, it leads to other characters destined to death and only inserted into the story for that single purpose. As it stands, this movie, which is a bubbly and cute family movie, avoided this trope very easily, and I think it goes without saying that we really liked that this trope was avoided in Turning Red. Another major Disney trope that gets abandoned in Turning Red is going on a quest. Most Disney movies include this to some degree. Sometimes the whole plot is based on it, like Onward or Princess and the Frog, while other times it's a smaller part of a major story, like in Hercules. Going on a quest happens in almost every major Disney movie and helps the protagonist grow in a myriad of ways. However, we understand that not every Disney film needs to hit the same boxes to be good, as we love Turning Red even without the quest aspect. However, with how intriguing the world it's set in is, and the possibility of a sequel, we would love to see more of this world, especially with Meilin's powers involved. So we kinda dislike that this trope got overlooked, and would love for the sequel to include a quest, even if it's only a smaller part of a much larger story. Another major Disney trope that was skipped was being an animated musical. More recent Disney and Pixar movies have been dropping this trope from their repertoire.
What? We're just being stupid.
But if Encanto is anything to go by, Disney musicals are still very well received, and Encanto had a wide variety of amazing songs. Now yes, Turning Red does have a soundtrack and original music made for the film, but that doesn't make it a musical. The classification of a musical is a bit weird and varies from person to person, but typically involves a film or play that moves its plot forward using music, and includes specific songs such as the classic I Want song trope, such as with I Can't Wait to Be King from The Lion King, or Waiting on a Miracle from Encanto. These typically include a variety of tracks afterwards and the occasional villain song, with Disney being king when it comes to villain songs, such as Friends on the Other Side from Princess and the Frog, or Poor Unfortunate Souls from The Little Mermaid. Just because we love musicals when they're done by Disney, we have mixed feelings that Turning Red wasn't a musical, even though it's certainly not quite the staple when it comes to Pixar. But considering how great the soundtrack of Turning Red is, fitting the early 2000s amazingly, and we would have loved to hear more. Next up, we have the trope of the banished protagonist. This trope, often called the exile, is literally when a character is exiled or banished from a kingdom, city, or realm into another or the wilderness, and they have to survive mostly on their own. Disney loves this trope, The Lion King and A Bug's Life being just a couple examples. Now, most often the exile is from a physical place, but it can also be from, say, a family, or a group as well. And that's likely what we would have seen if Turning Red had embraced that trope. But luckily it didn't. One of the best elements of the movie is the dynamic between Mei and her friends, and also Mei and her mom. And even though they butt heads or have a falling out, it's never taken to the extreme that these characters stop caring about one another. And for that reason, banishment would have just been too overkill. Way too much for a slice of life story like this. So we'll say that we definitely love that this trope was avoided. But let us know in the comments section which one of these tropes you were happy to see avoided in Turning Red. And let us know what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our Turning Red videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.